here with Dr. Ralph Kugler, who has been doing that 3D photogrammetry, and Amanda Cup, and
Collections Interpretation Manager. I support our CNR staff in how they share their information with the public.
Ralph is going to start with a few slides about the process.
Okay, so what we're going to show is mainly the virtual tours of exhibit halls at the Milwaukee Public Museum that we've been making, as well as some 3D models that are incorporated into the tours. We'll post the software that's used in the chat for doing both the virtual tours and the photogrammetry. The virtual tours are 360 by 180 degree tours. And there's a lot of information associated with them. We'll show those, live demonstration of those as we go. In the Milwaukee Public Museum webpage, the URL is shown here for the virtual tours. There's 6 tours posted at the present time. More coming up in the near future. With the tours, there's a button that gives information about navigation instructions, and importantly also there's a script for each tour that can be used by teachers that may also come to the museum with the tours. There's a bunch of different types of information associated with each tour, and in reality it's more information than you get just by reading the sign going through the tour itself. We'll have a demonstration of what each of these icons can do. One important factor is that for people that may be visually impaired, with the help of an assistant, there's audio for each of these icons here.
Yes, visually impaired or may have difficulty reading or difficulty reading in English. That's why we also included those audible options.
We've also been making 3D models of various specimens. In the tours, these are posted on Sketchfab, but they're not available for download at the present time. These models can be output in several ways. 3D prints, they can be put into 3D PDFs or Word files for distribution to teachers.
Yes, and so this is, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm gonna, oh, you do have a slide on it, sorry.
Yeah.
I'll let you go.
So for the dinosaur skull in the previous slide, we made a 3D print. Museum artists painted it to look like the original specimen. In addition, these models are useful for researchers. They can be scaled to actual size so that measurements can be made within the software. This helps preserve fragile specimens by not having to ship original samples. So here, let's see how to here.
So while Ralph is setting it up, I'll show you the 3D printed models of the type specimen. So if you don't know what type specimen is, they are something that there's only one of in the entire world. And it is the specimen that was used to describe a species. So we are very fortunate at NPM to have a Pachycephalosaurus type specimen. And a lot of visitors don't know what a type specimen is, but they are really a key part of museum collections. And so by printing up this one, And being able to let visitors handle it, it gives them like a really tangible connection to a type specimen, which is something normally we would almost never take out even of our collections because they are so precious to us, and helps teach visitors why our collections are important. And this can happen with all sorts of special items that visitors can't handle, but it's important for them to know about. This one in particular, we obviously Ralph had 3D scan the original. And then I had someone who had a hobby of 3D printing help me create the model, empty it out, and then we shipped it off to get printed by a company called Shapeways.
Mhm. Okay, so this is the NPM front page on the website, npm.edu. The 3D tours are under programs, 3D tours. So this is the page that we saw a few minutes ago, and I'll hand over to PJ to take a tour of the geology exhibit hall, the third planet.
Okay, so one of the reasons I find this incredibly useful is you can both prepare visitors' head so that they're ready to learn about what they're seeing. But you can also enhance these with all of the things. For instance, we had what do they call specimen button.
Sorry to interrupt. Could you move closer to the microphone? It's a little bit hard to hear
Oh,
you.
sorry about that. It
No
was
problem.
redundant. How about now? Better?
It's a little bit better.
Um,
One more touch?
maybe there's
Is yours on?
Oh,
So we're actually wearing little fancy microphones.
Oh,
I think Patty's.
maybe mine is low. Is that better?
yeah, that's much better. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Okay, so one of the keys to these tours is we were able to add in a lot of the material that we created for other things. For instance, there are videos that were created to go with the exhibit. I personally have found them very useful because I'm the collections manager and I can actually go down to the exhibit hall online and look at all of the specimens that are on display. So, for instance, if I need to know what what rocks are on display, I can go down, see them. It's been a time saver for me.
And one thing Ralph and I were very adamant about when we started creating these was that every label could be read. We really made that a priority when we're taking our photograph.
Just one more point on navigation. There's a number of ways to navigate through these tours. There's buttons here to navigate. There's arrows to go from room to room in the exhibit hall. And there's a map of the entire exhibit hall with this green partial circle here showing what direction you're working on. And these are active, so you can click and move from room to room from this map.
And I find that the easiest way to navigate. But I'll just give you a little demonstration of what you can see. For instance, if you wanted to look at our mineral case, you can actually click on the mineral case and get a high resolution image of that mineral case.
No,
Sorry, it's a little, I mean, it might be a little jumpy for you as the viewer because I'm navigating, but it is much smoother if you're the navigator. Right. And I'm going to continue on because one of the areas that I have worked most on is our Silurian Reef exhibit. So we have a fairly extensive third planet exhibit, and it has many fossils, many a lot of
yeah, or there. Okay.
There we go. Oops, sorry.
The chat is covering up our map, which makes it a little bit harder for us to manage it.
All right, so one of the reasons I want to highlight our Saurian Reef exhibit as well, that's what I study, but also we've utilized this exhibit in educational programming, and it's specialized programming since about 1998, when we had an NSF grant to do a special outreach to middle school girls. And this this 3D display can now mean that it can move out of the museum and any teacher could do this programming. So one of the programs that we did, and would be fun for teachers to do this in their classroom, is with the middle school girls, we did a census of the reef. Counting, how many brachiopods can you see, how many trilobites, identifying those, and then we had them compare it to an actual study of that was published, and then charted what was the differences they saw. The other reason I want to highlight this is the collections that informed this exhibit have recently been digitized through support with through IMLF, and it was a project that we did in conjunction with the Field Museum. So we have a website that goes along with this exhibit, and it's called the Virtual Silurian Reef. And Ralph has pulling it up for me. Oh. So this website dives deep into fossil Silurian reef, and in that Virtual Silurian Reef website, we have a searchable database that links to our digitized records from both the Field Museum and MPM. Here we go. So you can go tour the exhibit. Then if you want more information, or if one of the students is very interested, you can let them pursue this in depth. And here, where I'm circling right here, is where you can search for anything. You can search by a place. Most of our collections are from the Midwest, so if you live in Waukesha, Wisconsin, you can type in Waukesha, Wisconsin, and it will pull up all of the records that the Field Museum and MPM have from our Silurian collection on that site. Do you want to show the 3D object, or do you want to show 3D object?
I think we can show one of them.
Yeah. So one of the other things we link in our tours is some of the objects that Ralph was able to create 3D models of for me. So we have I think we have a trilobite in there. Sorry, I should have done that in a different order.
Okay, so these 3D objects can be manipulated on the website to look at all possible views of the specimen.
And again, this gives it students an opportunity to really engage with your collections on a level that they normally wouldn't. Another example, we have a gallery on the Wisconsin environment, flora and fauna. And one thing that we scanned for that was a mounted passenger pigeon, which is an extinct species, but it's a very beautiful species. And we have a 3D mount where for the same way that they could explore that creature through 3 different angles, or all angles, I suppose.
In addition to all of the, well, the flora and reef, we also, we have an iconic dinosaur exhibit called the House Face exhibit. And it's a very visual and immersive experience, but you can actually learn more on the website than that takes you beyond the immersive experience. So you can click on that, it'll give you information. There are videos, there are 3D model, the cell that we already showed you.
And there's PDFs there, which are, a lot of times they're activities that we've created. And some of these things were created, you know, not even in connection with this, but it's a great way to reuse something. So these PDFs might have been made for a summer camp or for some sort of outreach event. And instead we've uploaded them to this so that even people who can't come physically to our location can still interact with those sorts of opportunities.
I'll go to the collection. One tour we're just beginning to put together. It's not on the web yet. Is an area which is generally inaccessible to the public. And this is the geology collections area. And here we can look at a little bit of what may ultimately be when this becomes more fully fleshed, but we can look inside individual drawers at specimens, and ultimately maybe through the QR codes here connect to the database for the collection. So we're just beginning this.
So yeah, these threads are all coming together because Ralph has been doing this as we're digitizing the collection. So we're hoping to make the link between that collections database and these tours.
And then taking all of those links together and sending them out into the world. So, you know, this is a way that we can connect with other researchers, but also with other schools, and also just with some curious kiddo in Australia who wants to learn more about Midwest Silurian reefs.
And you'll be very impressed with how neatly organized that space is, right? It's a little bit chaotic in the basement, but.
So then Amanda can discuss maybe where we go in the future a little bit, and some issues regarding helping out with accessibility.
Yeah, so, oh gosh, how much time do we even have here? We got 10 minutes. I'll talk for very quickly for 5 minutes. So we created this, I believe in early COVID. Did we start this before COVID or after?
During. Yeah.
During, we started during to give people access to our collections. And they were extremely popular even after sort of all the restrictions let up. But there was a lot of work put into them. Ralph was a contract worker for us to do all of this. He and I together spent almost a month straight work. So 160 hours each for each of the tours that we did. When you click on them, we pulled, and that was pulling previous things that were already made. But the reason that this was a priority for our museum, a lot of that was access. And it's not just that physical access of not everyone can come to this museum, but there is a lot of other opportunities that this shows us, is that some parts of our museum, because it was built in the 60s, is just like before the ADA, are just inaccessible. We have something called the Streets of Old Milwaukee, where the windows are higher than most children or people in wheelchairs could use. So we can create this 3D tour where people who normally couldn't look in that window can now do so. They also rely on written information to share information, but people might be a slow reader, they're with a group, they can't read, or they read another language. So as we already showed you, we have the audible option for that. We also have the scripts for all of the galleries written out, so people can download them and read them at their leisure, which some of those scripts are 80 pages long, amazingly. So obviously no one's going to sit and read every single sign in a gallery like that. As Ralph already said, there's limited access to our collections and research spaces. And there's also limited time, especially for school groups. We have so much amazing things that we can provide to schools, but they only have a couple hours here, and that includes lunch and a tour and other things. So we want to give them that opportunity. And beyond that, we want to be more accessible to school teachers. We want to complement the curriculum that they have to support through these galleries. There are other things that we haven't yet completed with these 360 tours, including scavenger hunts and quizzes. So a teacher who's working on geology with their students could assign them to go through our 360 tour and complete a quiz at the end as an activity to do that with them. Obviously, also people who are blind or visually impaired, this the 360 tour isn't the best option, but can you stop sharing for just a second? A couple of people wanted to see this. I think the red button up right there. Yes. So this is what I had mentioned earlier, and some of you said you didn't see it, but people who are visually impaired, even if there's something really cool on display that they can see, if they are unable to see it, obviously they're not engaging the same way. So by being able to print things like this that they can actually touch, that gives them a more accessible experience as well. With the scripts, sorry, there's a lot of ways this is accessible. With the scripts, we also can translate those into a variety of languages, even though in terms of legacy, these very old exhibits, we can't go around and update them in Hmong and Spanish and all the other languages we would like to. Sending out a document to get translated that they can then grab as they walk through the exhibit is much easier. And I mentioned in the chat that we are moving in 2026. And this is a very beloved museum, and our exhibits are many decades old, and people love them because they are so immersive. And this process has given us a legacy that we can continue to visit this place even after it's gone. So that gives access to people of the future who might not get to experience this unique museum as well. So if you want to share your screen again, you can. We had our most recent one is pre-Columbian, and this again in the 60s, there were stairwells up to this and a very, very old elevator that no longer works. So we actually have one floor of our museum that's not accessible to visitors, which is a tragedy. And we have been creating a 360 tour for that as well, to provide more access to the museum. I'm going to scroll up in the chat here for a second, but I think that's most of what I had to